The Nazi Party was once among the world's most powerful yet hated regimes. Even today, its name is an anathema. But what exactly was the Nazi Party? How did it come to be? How did it gain a foothold long enough to take over not only Germany, but many other parts of Europe as well? What principles dictated its actions throughout the course of its rule? Cue Germany in the early 1900s. Germany had just lost World War I, and as a result, the country had fallen into huge debt. Inflation, hunger, unemployment, and economic stagnation were rampant throughout the country. Spirits were low, and the people were looking anywhere for someone who could save both them and their country. It was at this critical period in time that a new political party rose. Founded in 1919, the German Workers' Party stood for many of the things that the regular German did. It stood against Jews, promoted German pride and nationalism, and it expressed dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Versailles, which many were blaming for the problems that Germany then faced. Then, in 1921, a man by the name of Adolf Hitler became the leader of the German Workers' Party. He was a charismatic man whose speeches were filled with many of the things that almost everyone wanted to hear. In 1933, he became Chancellor of Germany. The world would never be the same. In that same year, the German Workers' Party was renamed to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party for short. Its members capitalized on the severe economic depression and unemployment to win many elections. It soon gained dictatorial power within the government. One of the things that the Nazi Party had promised the German people was the return of Germany to greatness. The first step towards that goal occurred in 1933, when those in power withdrew Germany from the League of Nations. But that wasn't enough. They wanted to spread their control and ideology throughout all of Europe. Over the next 6 years, German forces would spread throughout many of the countries that surrounded Germany. In 1936, they reoccupied the German Rhineland, which they had lost as a result of World War I. Next, they annexed Austria in 1938 and then invaded Czechoslovakia in 1939. The final straw for other countries occurred when German forces invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. Declarations of war on Germany soon followed, officially ushering in World War II. The Nazi struggle for power wasn't limited to grand land grabs, however. It soon turned its gaze inward, on its own people. The Nazi Party had been founded on socialist ideology, which sound good on paper, but when put into practice, create horrors no one could imagine. The first concentration camp was established in Dachau, Germany in 1933. It was created to house political prisoners, primarily German communists, social democrats, trade unionists, and other opponents. Regular German citizens soon began losing their rights as well as the regime tightened its control. Freedom of speech was one of the first rights removed. Books were burnt, films were banned, and media strictly controlled. Freedom of assembly soon followed, as did privacy. Officials read mail, listened in on telephone conversations, and conducted random searches of homes. As the regime tightened its control more and more, those in power continued to spread Nazi ideology. One such idea was that of racial superiority. In Hitler's mind, there was only one correct race of human beings, those who had the blonde hair and blue eyes of the Aryan race. All the rest were either striving to achieve that Aryan perfection or were undesirables, people who could not further the human condition at all. Included within that undesirable category were Jews, Gypsies, the physically and mentally handicapped, and the children of German citizens and the African soldiers who had stayed in Germany after the end of World War I. One of the steps taken to ensure that these undesirables did not further contaminate the human race was the process of forced sterilization. Over 400,000 people had to endure this procedure. Another effect of the thought that Aryans were the desired race was the racial discrimination that occurred in schools. Children had to go through multiple tests to determine whether they were Aryan, Jewish, or other. Children who did not meet with the correct criteria were ostracized by their peers and eventually forced out of the schools altogether. Nazi policy did not stop at labeling, however. In October of 1939, Hitler authorized the beginnings of the euthanasia program. Those targeted by the program included the physically and mentally handicapped who had been deemed unworthy of life. While the program was eventually stopped in August of 1941, after public criticism grew too great, the killings still continued in secret individual cases. Mobile killing squads also traveled the country, killing Jews, Gypsies, and Soviets, either in mass shootings or in vans fitted out as small gas chambers. In December of 1941, the Chelmno Killing Center began running. The Nazis would later create 5 such camps: Auschwitz, Buzet, Majdanek, Sobibor, and Treblinka. The victims of these camps included Soviets, Jews, Gypsies, Christians, homosexuals, and Poles. The prisoners had to endure horrible conditions, many of them dying not from the gas chambers, but from diseases or starvation. By the end of the war, nearly 2,700,000 Jews had been killed in these centers, as well as thousands of others, including up to 220,000 Gypsies. The Nazi Party may have seemed invincible to those in power, but by 1944, the death throes of this great war machine had started. Allied forces stormed the shores of Normandy on June 6, 1944. They had soon made their way into France, liberating it on August 25th. By April 30th, 1945, Soviet troops were nearing the Reich Chancellery. Hitler committed suicide on that same day. On May 2nd, the German General Helmuth Weidling surrendered Berlin to Soviet General Vasily Chuikov. Many of the remaining German forces would surrender within the next 6 days. The killing blow to the powerhouse that had been Nazi Germany occurred on May 7, 1945. On that day, members of the German Oberkommando der Wehrmacht and representatives of the Allied Expeditionary Forces signed the German Instrument of Surrender. This signified the end of World War II in Europe and the end of a reign of terror that had been going on since 1933. The Nazi Party had promised the German people hope, when all hope seemed lost. What it gave them, however, was bloodshed and war. Even after the regime was toppled, the repercussions of what had happened were still felt. Even today, we are struggling to overcome the ideologies that the Nazis believed in. But as long as we continue to remember what happened, and we teach those who follow after us to stand against such thoughts, we can keep such despots from rising again. Thank you for watching.